thanks a lot. First of all, let me say this is a joint work with Adattamente Colleagues in Venice. First of all, Adattamente headed the shared team in Venice, which I must say is quite big, given they are not running the operations in Italy, but although we are still useful to the process. And other two colleagues, Elena Buia and Francesca Fortuna. Okay, so the topic here is trying to put together two different types of, let's say, informal care, which takes place within families, which we call, let's say, downward care, care from the grandparents towards grandchildren, and the care that the parents later on receive from their child when they get into troubles with them. So why is this interesting? Well, we know that one of the consequences of population aging is an increase in the demand for long-term care services. And the informal care has already been widely studied as a possible device to decrease the burden on the public long-term care expenditure. Why is that? Well, because informal care from other children can substitute for formal care and can reduce or postpone the demand for institutional care. On the other hand, long-term care, informal care has been shown to have bad consequences for caregivers, in particular in terms of labor market participation, also in terms of health and so on. And this affects in particular daughters, which are the most important in this activity. On the other hand, it is also childcare is still leads mothers to experience, let's say, lower labor market involvement than desired. Why is that? Well, that's because the public supply of childcare is very heterogeneous across and even within countries, and often is not sufficient to fulfill all the demand from the households. So also in this respect, informal care, which is again help given by the parents to their other children, caring for the third generation downwards, can alleviate the burden on adult children, especially on daughters, allowing them to have, let's say, a smoother transition in and out the labor market at maternity episodes. One important feature which relates closely to the aging process we are experiencing is that such a within-family source of childcare is likely to expand in the future due to the reduction of morbidity. Actually, health of, let's say, young elderly is improving. Therefore, I mean, the potential number of child caregivers is expanding. So, what's the research questions here? What we want to try to investigate is whether parents who provided help with the grandchildren early in life, do receive more care later on from their other children when they are in need. So next to it, it would be interesting to understand whether this association is the result of, let's say, reciprocal altruism within the family, or let's say the informal care is a sort of repayment for the help received earlier on in life with child. Okay. So again, we try to link those two streams of, let's say, service transfers within the family. So why is that relevant from a policy perspective? Well, first of all, because the combination of informal grandchild care and long-term care provision might decrease the overall fiscal cost of the care services without creating troubles or alleviating the troubles on the careers and on the labor market prospects of women. Next to it, well, whether these reciprocal transfer of services comes from delayed reciprocity or from, let's say, an exchange motivation, has it by itself a policy relevance. Why is that? Well, if it is only due to altruism, it's only that parents cares about their children and vice versa, it's quite unlikely that policy intervention can alter the pattern of caregiving and as a consequence of labor market participation. On the other hand, if long-term care given later in life to the adult children is a sort of repayment for the child care received, well then the two generations are basically agreeing on an implicit contract, and therefore there is much more scope for a policy intervention in that case. For example, increasing public spending on childcare can have an effect also on the behavior of children later on in life towards their parents. So what we do? Well, first of all, to try to answer these questions, SHARE is basically the only available data set that allows to do that. Why is that? Well, basically we need detailed information on the two types of care in two different points in life. We need parents that provide care, let's say, early in their 50s or 60s, then that start experiences limitations and then need care from their partner, from their kids. Okay? So we do have those information we share. We have the care given with the children, with grandchildren in wave 1 or 2, and then 6-8 years later we have the care received by the very same respondents in wave 4. Okay? So what we have a data set where each record is one household, where we have the help given with grandchildren to any other child in wave 1 or 2, and then the help supplied by children to the respondent or partner in wave 4. Okay? What we look at both at the probability of receiving care in wave 4, again, conditional on giving help in wave 1 or 2, and on the intensity of care, which is the number of days. And as I will try to show you, the two things are quite different. Okay. So first, some descriptive figures to give a feeling on how big is this thing. Well, first of all, this is on the left-hand side panel is the probability of providing help, or if you want, the fraction of people interviewed in wave 4, which in wave 1 or 2 gave help to their children. Okay? And as you can see, there is quite some variation across countries, but what strikes me is that, well above 1/3 of the sample did provide some help to their children with grandchildren. Okay? Of course, we are restricting it to parents who do have grandchildren. When you move to the days of care provided, well, the picture changes quite a bit. Okay? So it seems that everybody is happy to help with their grandchildren, but again, Mediterranean Europeans do provide help every other day. Okay? Those are days per month. While, okay, Germans, okay, they have with their children, but just on Sundays, let's say. Okay? So as you see, again, across countries there is a huge variation, both on the probabilities, but even more on the number of days of child care. So what about long-term care? Well, similar picture, which calls for an association between the two. Again, we do have variation across countries. We have a peak in the Czech Republic on the probability of receiving care. And again, Spain and Italy are those in which other children, in particular daughters, are most involved in care. Those are 15, 16 days per month of care, okay, to their adult children. This amount of care does not allow to be on the labor market. Okay? That's, again, if you want, the economic issue of it. While this participation may be. And again, as Martina was suggesting, there is a big divide between the Mediterranean and Eastern European countries on one side and the Northwest countries on the other. Okay? The nice thing is that next to it, to try to understand something more, we need within-country variation. Okay? This just calls for an association, again, which can be a pure effect of cultural differences between Mediterranean and, let's say, more familistic societies and the Northwest European countries. If we want to see if some exchange going on, we do need within-country relation, and we do have that. So what we do, we run a regression analysis to try to exploit and control for other determinants of long-term care. Okay? So first, what about the probability of receiving care for children? This graph just shows you the results from a probability regression. So how do we interpret them? Okay, take as a baseline a German one-person household with no children, with a mean age and income and limitations in activities of daily living, and for whom the health condition did not worsen between wave 2 and wave 4. Okay? And the bars gives you the deviations from this baseline. As you can see, okay, this, which seems a small bar, tells you that those respondents who helped with providing care in wave 1 or 2 are 15% more likely to receive care when they get older. Other things being equal, which is a quite substantial thing. Okay? Of course, couple households are much less likely to receive help. That's because the spouse is the most important care provider. Okay, still there are country differences, and as you can see, I mean, it seems that Italians are less likely to provide care than Germans. Okay, and the other results are what we expect. Again, this is the big results. Caring for grandchildren increases the chances of receiving care later on in life by 15%. Okay. What about the days of care? In the day, when we move to the intensity of care, well then, the fact that you provided care in the past does not play a role anymore. Okay? So here, what seems to matter is basically these, let's say, cultural differences between North and Southern Europe. Look here, okay? If you are an Italian compared to a German, you will provide 14 days of care more per month. Okay, other things being equal. Okay? So the only thing that is driving, it seems that the only thing, even conditioning on other determinants, the only thing that is driving the intensity of care seems to be, let's say, the country of origin, okay, leading to more, let's say, cultural explanation. Okay? We are trying to control for some institutional differences as much as we can, but that's the picture. Okay? So to conclude, the first message is that there is a substantial number of households which are involved both in downwards and upwards care. Okay? So informal care, and not only the well-known, at least in the economic literature, long-term care for the elderly activity is important, but also the care for the grandchildren is a relevant phenomenon. Okay? There are great differences across and within countries, and both culture, let's say, altruism and attitudes toward family and institutions, so the availability of care services and so on, are likely to matter. Okay? Intergenerational transmission of informal care, again, cannot be ignored. Okay? There is something there. Okay? We are not saying that we are clearly identifying a causal pattern, even if we are going towards that direction, because we are exploiting the longitudinal dimension of share. But still, okay, there is something there, okay? And, in terms of numbers, we did find that the previously provided grandchildren care leads to a higher probability of receiving long-term care, while there is no effect on the intensity of such a care activities. Thanks.
Giacomo, fascinating talk. Again, we have a few minutes for questions, if there are any.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I was wondering if you added altruistic variables into your regressions.
Okay, yes, that's a good question. Yes, we did. Okay, not in the specification that I showed you, but another nice feature of Share is that there is a drop-off questionnaire in which some extra questions are asked. Some of them are exactly about attitudes towards the duties within the families and so on. We built a couple of indices trying to catch, again, the altruism within the family, or how much you perceive the family has to take care about the other family members and added this as a determinant, and the picture does not change. Actually, the number is very, very similar. Okay? So I prefer to show this specification because in that case the sample is somewhat more selected, and therefore okay, we consider this. But again, also controlling for direct answers about attitudes towards the family duties does not change the picture. Okay? There is this positive association between care given early in life and care received later on.
Okay, we have more.
Perhaps it's a stupid question because I don't know the share survey well enough. But you have enough people who actually do receive care in old age in the survey to make this analysis?
Yes, we do. I mean,
and then it's sort of, and then you ask these people what they did 40 years ago, basically. In order to establish this.
We did ask them 6 years ago whether they were helping for their grandchildren. It's not a retrospective question.
So this is okay.
This is also interesting. This is people that was interviewed in wave 2, wave 1 or wave 2, and then at that time they said, yes, we are helping with our kids. Okay? And then 6 years later, 8 years later, are reporting that they are receiving care. Actually, to be extremely sharp, we excluded those people that in wave 1 and 2 reported to be simultaneously caring for their grandchildren and receiving care. So those are actually people that were in good health and in condition to help 6, 8 years ago, and then when later on started to receive care. And again, yes, we do have enough data to run this kind of analysis.
That's why every euro is good.
Okay, I think I've seen maybe 1, 2 more questions. One more question. 2 more questions, and then we'll move on.
First of all, thanks for the presentation. I just want to know if you control by gender to see if the women and men.
Well, not in this analysis because this is run at household level, so it's somewhat difficult to control for gender because the single household with the couple household where the household head is a female are somewhat peculiar, let's say. What we also did is to run this at individual level. We are actually almost able, let's say, to link each and every respondent to each and every grandchild. Okay? And at that point, we can run it at an individual level. And there we can control for gender. But at this stage, it's somewhat complicated to control for gender. So there is no direct control for gender.
Last question.
I just wondered if you controlled for distance. Do people reciprocate over large distances, or is it?
Yeah, that's a tricky issue. Again, we did try. Okay, nothing changes, including distance between the caregiver and the care receiver. But it's quite likely that people do decide where to live in order to give or receive care, and also. A long time people may decide to move closer to their children in order to receive care. So in some way, this is part of the decision process. It is endogenous to the picture. Therefore, we decided to leave it aside. Again, this is, as it has always been in the first result book, this is a first explorative analysis which we hope will lead to further research by us, but also by someone else.
Thank you. Okay, the last paper